In this exercise, you're going to have the opportunity to put into practice the endings that we learned in chapter 4 and the vowel changes that we discussed here in chapter 5 so that you can see what is happening with Hebrew words. On your worksheet, you have a number of examples to work with. I'm going to walk you through the first two that have already been completed so that you can see the process that you will go through. Should follow the same steps each time. Eventually you'll get to a point where this can be done in your head and you don't need to go through all the steps. You can jump right to the end if need be, but going through it step by step will be extremely helpful as you begin to understand how Hebrew nouns and adjectives are formed. In example 1, we have the adjective great, gadol. What we want to create is the expression "and great women." So we need to take the adjective, we need to create gender and number that will indicate that it's women rather than men or a woman, and we need to add the conjunction onto the front of the word. So the first step, like we illustrated in the video lecture for the chapter, is to determine the historic form. So when I look at this word, what I notice is that I have, first of all, a comets, and we learned that comets is almost always a historic short vowel. So I want to write in a patach in my representation of the historic form. The second vowel I notice is a long O, and it has a vowel marker. That means this is an unchangeable historic vowel, and no matter what I do to this word, that particular vowel is never going to change. In step 2, I want to add the appropriate ending and divide it into syllables. Now, the reason we divide into syllables in step 2 is that if I do it before I add the endings, the syllables aren't going to line up the same. So I want to add the ending first. So in this case, I want to say great women. I want to make it plural. So I'm going to be adding the oat ending that indicates feminine and plural. Now I divide it into syllables. First syllable break goes before the dalet, so first syllable is ga. The second syllable is over the right after the o, before the lamed, and then my accent is going to be at the end. That means the dalet stands in the near syllable and the gimel stands in the distant syllable. So this is my historic form and the form that has been adjusted to accommodate what I want to say in my Hebrew sentence or expression. Now in step 3, I want to follow the vowel rules. So I'm going to have to reassess each of these components. So the first thing that I will do is I will leave the historic long O, because a historic long O will never change. I don't have to even worry about the vowel rule, near open syllables like to lengthen, because I can't do anything to this vowel. It's an unchangeable historic long vowel. The distant open syllable, according to our rule, will reduce. So I will put in a schwa, and the form that I would get if I was just saying great women would be gedolot. That's the word for great women. But the exercise also occasionally asks you to add other items, and it does this so that you can review the things that you have learned. And in this case, we want to add the word and, or the conjunction and, in Hebrew. So what we're doing is we're taking a vav and we're putting it at the front of the word gedolot. Now, if you remember, as you go through the different ways in which a conjunction is added onto the word, normally it would simply take a schwa. It has no vowel, and so you would put a schwa under the vav and add it onto the word. But we have a problem because the gimel also has a schwa, and that would create too many consonants at the front of the word to be pronounceable. So we learned the bump schwa rule. Before bait, mem, pay, bump, and before consonants with schwa, the vowel of the conjunction will be oo. So here you can see it changed. And because we move from a vowel into the gimel, it can no longer take the begad kafat dot that was in the earlier form when it stood at the beginning of a sentence. We are now at the end of the process of creating the expression "and great women." It would be articulated as ugedolot. That's the first example. That's the kind of thing that you will do in each of the examples. And there is an answer key for you to check the steps, to check the process, and see that you're going through the right sequence and the right logic and application of the vowel rules. That's going to mean that you are going to have to learn the chart with the vowel changes on it. You're going to have to memorize the 3 vowel rules, and then you're going to have to apply them in this fashion. Let's try one more example. So here we have the word tzaddik, the righteous woman. Now, in the first step, we want to determine the historic form. So we put in the consonants again, and we're going to assess each of the vowels to determine what we're dealing with. Now, in the first case, we have a short A. We know it's a historic short vowel. No surprises there. In the second vowel, we know that we're dealing with a historic long vowel. We have a vowel marker that marks this as a historic long vowel. Now, from my perspective as a teacher that has worked with Hebrew for a long time, I'm already feeling pretty comfortable about this word because I realize this word is completely unchangeable. No matter what you do to this word, it can never change because the historic long vowel will never change, and the short vowel under the tzadi that appears before the doubled consonant is in a closed, unaccented syllable that likewise is stable and unchangeable. So no matter what you do to this word, you should be able to just slap an ending on it and have it work out. But for the sake of illustration, we want to take you through the process of analyzing each component of the process. So let's add the ending and divide it into syllables. We want to take the adjective righteous, tzaddik, and we want to say the righteous woman. So I need to add the ah ending that indicates a singular feminine individual. I'm then going to divide it into syllables. Now, when I encounter a short vowel, I automatically anticipate that the syllable must be closed. Okay? Tzad, I've got a doubled consonant here. Okay? I want to have this particular word divided through the dalet so that one dalet closes the syllable in front. The second dalet opens up with the next consonant and vowel. So tzad, D, and then the kof has its own syllable divider. And so as a result, I will divide the word in this fashion, tzad, D, ka. Now, we mark the accent. We also mark the near syllable which includes the second dalet and the hirik yod, and then we mark the distant syllable, which includes the tzadi, the patach, and the first dalet. Now, we follow the vowel rules. Is anything going to happen to the historic long vowel? No. A historic long vowel is unchangeable. And I can't do anything in a closed unaccented syllable. A closed unaccented syllable requires a short vowel. It has to stay the same. So in this case, tzadikah is my end result, and it's very similar to the word that I started out with, simply because this word is a very stable sort of word. I now have to add the other items. Now in this case, we want to put the definite article the on the front of the word. We remember that the definite article is a he, a patach, and a doubling dot. And when you slide that over onto the word, we end up with hatzadikah. And this is our end result. We have reached the final form of what we were trying to create and can see why our vocabulary word is the way it is and why all the resulting forms that show up in the biblical text have exactly the same pattern, whereas other words may change. This word has no vulnerable vowels. Other words do, and depending on the context, this may affect what they look like. Now, as you complete this exercise, you will be given a couple examples using seglet nouns. Remember, we talked about the fact that these have a different historic base. So as you go back to the historic form, make sure that you remember a singular seglet noun has one syllable. A plural seglet noun has two syllables. As long as you start with that historic starting point, the process of carrying out the vowel changes will work very simply for you, and you should be able to get through the process with no problem. So give it a try. Use it as a learning experience and see if you can start to see the reasons why the words show up in the biblical text the way that they do.